Ramsey Library Video Production is proud to present a Fall 2019 Brown Bag. Community and University Archivists, the Western North Carolina LGBTQIA+ Oral History Project, featuring Amanda Ray, Jean Hyde, Rachel Muir, Simon Brooks, Horace Vanderbilt, Libby Ward, and Kaylin Presler.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us for a Brown Bag today. I'm Amanda Ray. I teach in the English department as well as Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies, and I am the faculty director for the Key Center for Community Engaged Learning. So we will all introduce ourselves as we go along. We're focusing today on the LGBTQIA+ Oral History Archive, which is also a print archive as well, and we'll pass some of those things around, I think, and share some of that. We have things here for us to look at too, so we'll have time to get up and look at things. But this is, all of this is collected archive material that we've received from individuals who've just donated boxes of stuff to us. And our archivists have worked really hard to process these materials, and these were some of the products we made for Pride Festival. All right, so. Our project started, I'll go through the timeline, but ultimately our goal here is to document a richer, fuller, more inclusive history of LGBT folks in Western North Carolina, but largely from the South in general. We started this project because I worked on a similar project in Arizona we did a state archive in Arizona. That was part of my undergraduate, part of my doctoral work. And when I came here, I don't know if you know, but Asheville is considered, the 12th or the 13th gayest city in the United States. We have more same-sex couples in Asheville, in Buncombe County, than any other city in the state. And yet we didn't have an archive that was dedicated to LGBT identity. There is one at PAC, right? But it was surprising to me. I came here, I've worked with Jean for many years as an instructor, and I bring my students here with first year writing and my WGSS students. And it was really surprising to me that we didn't have a dedicated archival space for LGBT folks and communities. And so I put it on the burner and really wanted to work with that. And then after I got tenure, I had a little space and we started doing this work, basically. And Rachel will talk, she is our community partner. She'll talk about how the project came together in that way. But just quickly, our overall arching goals for the project is to gather stories, have a richer, fuller history. Right now, we feel like they're, especially LGBT people in Appalachia, are really at risk of becoming invisible, not just our histories, but in body. We have a lot of political things happening right now that's threatening us in terms of our freedom to exist. We also really wanted to foster intergenerational conversation within LGBT folks, so we try really hard to pair elders with youth, whether it's a youth interviewing an elder or the other direction. That is one of the issues that started to pop up early in our interviews, is a feeling of like silos or people being isolated within the LGBT social movement. We also, our goal was to create connections within Western North Carolina. We're doing this, but we want to do better at this, in particular doing the urban-rural connection. So we're seeking now to recruit people, interviewers, as well as people to be interviewed who are coming outside of Asheville. So if you have any information or leads for us, please do share those with us. Ultimately, our goal is to, once we have all of this data accessible, it will be possible for us to create a needs assessment for the area. We ask all of our interviewees, what kind of events do you go to? Where do you find community? What attracted you to Asheville and has made you feel supported here? We also are trying to create an asset map. So which events have really worked to create, like Pride Fest, for example, is something that is in a lot of people's coming out journeys. Going to Pride for the first time is a big step for many people. So our goals with for the needs assessment and the asset mapping, our long-term goals, we're not necessarily having enough data for all of that right now, but that's where we're headed with that. Do you want to talk about how the project got started, and we can talk through this timeline maybe together?
Sure.
I'll let you introduce yourself.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rachel Muir. My role in this has its genesis in two organizations that I am part of. One of them is Blue Ridge Pride. By the way, we had a 15,000 plus people participate in Blue Ridge Pride this year. It tripled the number we had 3 years ago. So that's notable about the growth we've had in awareness in the community and also celebration of the LGBT community here in Western North Carolina. The other organization is the YMCA of Western North Carolina. This YMCA, I'm a member of the working group at the YMCA that works on LGBTQ issues. I'm also an employee there. In their effort to try and find a way to do better work in the community and become more present and known by the LGBTQ community, they began to look into what can we do. So these things came together beginning about in an event that was in August of 2017. It's a little bit of an aside, but I think it's worth explaining why we have this interest and why these organizations have come together to do that. Tina Madison White, who was the executive director of Blue Ridge Pride, and I found ourselves at a wake for a friend of ours. Her name was Holly Boswell. Holly had been the first person, perhaps 15, 16 years ago, who was exploring gender fluidity. And she was based here in Asheville, but her influence was widespread. She had been involved in a event called Southern Comfort, which was really the focus for particularly the trans community in the Southeast and nationally. It was the single largest event in that community for a decade or two. At her wake and her passing, there were some displays about her life, and we realized the extent of her life and her influence here in Asheville and nationally. So the question was, how do we preserve this? And the second question was, why Asheville? Why here in Western North Carolina do we have such a progressive attitude about LGBTQ people? And how is it that they played a central role, for example, in the revival of downtown Asheville? Wonderful questions from a standpoint from a sociology question, but also a historical question. So these three organizations, Blue Ridge Pride, the YMCA of Western North Carolina, and the University of North Carolina, Asheville, sort of came together beginning in about July of 2018. And I really, rather than go to the specific details, which I'll let Amanda do, but I want to emphasize this all came together rather quickly. And the partners, and those partners, by the way, are growing. The partners that came together and did this seem an odd group maybe on the outset, but we have found so much synergy in what we've been doing. That is in part why this effort has grown so rapidly and I think so successfully.
So I think there was a meeting. Did you all have a meeting at some point? I wasn't part of that meeting.
It was a meeting here on the campus with the Human Resources on July 8th of 2018.
Oh, okay. So I wasn't part of that meeting. I don't know why. I heard about it, but I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. But I got brought into the conversation. Lindy Hewitt encouraged me into the conversation, which was great. And I had done some of this work before in Arizona, as I said. And so it did. It just kind of like blew up and we started working together. I'm so glad you're here, Tina. Thank you. So Blue Ridge Pride comes to UNCA in the summertime. We start talking about it, and then I recruit the first class of interns in December. So that became our quote-unquote free labor for the semester. They were Corey Childers, Libby Ward, and Grace Whitaker. And we didn't know exactly what we were all going to be able to accomplish, so we just started. And I was like, we started by, here's what oral history is. Here's how to do oral history. Now let's go out and do some. And that's what we did. Rachel and Tina worked to give us a really beautiful list of people who were interested in being interviewed for the archive. And so we just started ticking them off one by one. In March, we went to the Queer History South Conference. This was a connection that I made. Josh Burford and Megan, do you remember Megan's last name?
I don't.
I can't remember Megan's last name. It's just terrible. But they started the Invisible History Project maybe 3 years ago, and I encountered them at the University of Oklahoma at the Oral History Conference that year. That was 2014, because I remember because I was pregnant. So in 2014, I started talking to them. Well, we don't have an archive at our institution in Asheville, and that seems crazy. And so we started talking about that. And so Josh was just really generous to keep me in the fold of information. He has since left academia to do this work full time, and he is documenting Queer History South. So they just did a whole thing in Mississippi where they've partnered with all institutions of education in Mississippi so that everyone is trained to collect materials, and then they all come to Invisible History. So we went to the Queer History South conference that was in Birmingham. It was an amazing experience. Maybe Libby could talk a little bit about what that was like. We learned so much about what we should be doing, what we were doing that was really good already, what we needed to do a little bit more of. So then we started doing more interviews. We come back, we do more interviews. At this point, we have, I think, 18 participants that we have interviewed. We've interviewed almost all of them twice, so that reflects generally about 3 hours of audio per participant. In August, we recruited our second class of interns, Horace Vanderbilt, Libby returning, thankfully, as a co-educator with me, Simon Brooks and Kaylin Pressler. You'll hear from them in a minute. And then in August, with the generous support of the Y and Blue Ridge Pride, we hosted a community training workshop. We had 25 people who registered, and there were 28 in the room who came to be trained on how to do interviews, how to be part of the process. And while not all of those people have been paired with somebody at this point, I have 5 or 7, I can't, somewhere around in there, who have contacted me, 2 of whom who've already done 2 interviews each. So these are people who weren't part of the project but think oral history is a methodology that matters. They think LGBT history is really important to be documenting, and so they came to the table, and now they're doing the work, which is really great. I am teaching in the spring a oral history for social change class, so I'm hoping to recruit from that class a new class of students who want to be interns and can try to maintain the momentum of our project.
One other item is that we put together a booth at Blue Ridge Pride, and we were present there, and we also recruited a lot of new people to be interviewed. So
I think we had a list of 44 different names that were different than we already had, of people who either wanted to be interviewed or who wanted to join as an interviewer. And then, of course, we've already contacted all of those people, and we have a long list of people who want to be interviewed. We just don't have enough time right now in interviewers. So if you're interested in becoming an interviewer, please let us know.
Absolutely. And one of the areas we really want to focus on is, it's sort of a 50-cent word, but intersectionality. We're looking for people in the community who, of course, like all of us, have multiple identities. You may be trans, but you also may be African American. You may be a gay man, but you also may be somebody who's dealing with AIDS. There are many different communities, and the LGBTQ moniker is really an umbrella. And part of this is not just connecting young people to elders to get their stories, but also to connect among communities. So
Absolutely.
If you have contacts with some of those communities that fall under that umbrella, we are really anxious to try and make sure that we reflect Asheville as a whole in our efforts. So, but you're probably going to say this, but I'm going to say it first, is that the engine behind the work that we've been doing and who've really helped us remarkably in making this happen are sitting over here.
Absolutely.
So are we ready to
Yes.
turn it over to them?
Absolutely. I don't know who's going next, but go for it.
Cool. Hey, so my name's Horace Vanderbilt. I'm one of the interns with the project this semester. I'm actually a biology major. with a minor in women's gender sexuality studies, probably like not what you were expecting. But for me, I really love this project. It's something new, something exciting that I haven't gotten to work with before. So I do want to talk a little bit about like why oral history, why this matters. Oral history is considered the people's history. Most history you'd read about in like history books, what you learn in class, isn't the history of the masses, it's the history of the privileged. So oral history is really, really important for getting out the voices of the people and getting those into the history books so that we can know about what would otherwise be invisible histories, as one of the other oral history projects is named. So oral history, though it is, of course, like a thousands of year old tradition, it's particularly rooted academically in the Industrial Revolution. It was the workers who were generally not as represented in history that were being interviewed for oral history projects. Oral history is also really amazing for building relationships. As Amanda was discussing earlier, oral history is really amazing for fostering those intergenerational connections. We really do try to pair like youth with elder folks in the community, elder folks with youth in the community, and everyone else in between, as well as we want to focus on all identities under the LGBTQ umbrella and build relationships between those identities. There has been some debate in the past in academia about the rigor, quote unquote, of oral history. It's been said to be, not as rigorous, not as credible, not as numerical. But the reality is that oral history can be an incredibly academic discipline. It's really usable data, and it's really important data. So that's why we need it today. What's next, or should I keep going? Cool. So our project status so far. We have so far interviewed 18 participants. As we were saying, most of them more than once. We do a session and then come back later on to kind of follow up on that. We also have a long, long list of other people who want to be interviewed. So again, if any of y'all are interested, I'm definitely looking for more. We have about 30 hours of audio currently recorded. Many of it has already been transcribed as well as coded. Much of it still needs to be transcribed and coded. And we also have 14 whole boxes of archival material, old magazines, photos, advertisements, things like that, that some of our friends over here are currently working on going through. Okay. That's something else. Go ahead.
Cool. I don't think I have a slide up here, but I'm Simon Brooks. I'm an English major here and the archivist for the project. We have some materials. I guess I should pass it around. So these photos were donated by Michael Todd, who was the founder of the Radical Fairies group.
He was very influential in.
Oh, okay.
Hayes was the founder.
These are a treasure.
Yes, it's amazing. It's amazing working with all of this.
It's so
Actually.
fun. It's like digging around in people's private stories and their scrapbooks, and looking at stuff on their fridge. It's so fun.
Okay, so where do I go from here? Yes, we did get 14 boxes of material, but unfortunately, a lot of that was national and not focused in Western North Carolina. So of all the 14 boxes, I've got about 1.5 that I will be using for the project. I've been reaching out looking for more material to fill the gaps in our research, what we have so far. So if anyone is interested in donating material, you could also do that.
What kind of, because I know I'm going to get this question from some people who I know are holding on to some real treasure troves, but they're very hesitant to give up control.
Yes.
So what technologies do we have? Is it something we can bring to them, or do they need to loan to us?
Yeah, you can donate material. We'll scan it and send it back as soon as possible.
We do need to bring it in. Okay.
So, yes. Yeah, but everything is in very safe hands. Make sure all the material that I've sent out comes back, please. Thank you.
when to talk about your project. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm Gene Hyde. I'm head of special collections here, and Simon's been working under my supervision, working with this collection. And a little bit of context here. When Amanda first came to me and started talking about this project, it's like, this is a perfect fit for what we do, because we were founded in 1977 specifically to document the diversity of the region. And this is a community that has been woefully underrepresented in archival materials. And this community archiving project is so fabulous because it empowers the people in the community to make choices and decisions about what's important to share and to have some control over how it's shared. You may, you're talking about going in and looking at somebody's stuff on the refrigerator. They may want to share those 2 or 3 pictures, but not that 4th and 5th one, and it's their choice. And this empowering people through community archiving is really a growing trend here in Southern Appalachia. And for it to be happening here in this incredible community that's part of this larger community, and for things to be coming here for people in the future to see. When we talk about archives, I often say, it's not what people are going to come in 5 years, it's what people are going to come in 200 years and look at. When we're long gone, we go for that sort of preservation. And to have Simon here working with this material, it's been really great. And what we're doing is we're organizing these papers. There's a couple that we have groups that, things that I've never seen before that are not showing up very much. And this is going to become part of the record that people can come and understand the community later on. And right now he's sorting through things and coding things for important articles in some of these papers, and we'll be doing some actual archiving processing of this material. And for your question about what can people share, part of the community archiving spirit, if you will, is you don't have to give us the original if you don't want. You can bring it here, get it scanned, we'll give you a copy of the scan, and if you give us permission to share that copy, we can do that.
You could create, or maybe you have, just a simple one-page PDF that we could give to them, and that even had contact info, that made it feel substantial to them, that they know who to call if they can't find it. That would help us a lot.
We can put that together real soon and get that, yeah. But again, it's community empowered, and that's so different than 50 years ago, the academic running out into the field with the tape recorder going, "Hi, tell me your story." And that's a very, very cool thing going on here. Mm-hmm. What kind of stuff did you hand out here?
So those materials, it's kind of I tried to get very encompassing collection of the larger collection in the back. So things about pride, things from the AIDS crisis back in the mid to late 80s, at the peak of it. Yeah, just an encompassing thing. I'm most excited about documenting the changes from mid to late 80s to present day in Western North Carolina. Things that I've been seeing about Asheville specifically is describing it as a very conservative, bigoted place back in maybe the early 90s, and it's now moved into a very unapologetically LGBT space. And I think it's going to be great to see how that has changed and why and what it has all influenced in the region. It's the thing I'm most excited about, I guess. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Libby Ward. I'm a senior here at UNC Asheville. I'm a mass comm major and an English major.
I'm Kaylin Pressler. I'm an English major and a psychology minor.
Cool. So this is my second year of the project, working with everybody, and just my experience has been a really great experience personally. When I first got an email, I think a lot of just English majors got a mass email saying, Professor Ray is doing this project, do you guys want to get involved? That kind of just, and I remember reading it and being like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. I think I'm just going to go for it. I took a class with Professor Ray, so I know her, so I feel like it might work out, I don't know. And I think it did. So yeah, that first day we were there, the other interns, Grace and Corey and I, we all just kind of sat there and we didn't know exactly what to expect. We didn't know, we didn't know. And when Amanda and Rachel started talking to us about what oral history is and why it matters, that's when I got really into it. I was just asked to speak about oral history. So when we learned about oral history, in school, like they're just like, oh, people talking, you just like record it, it's not a big deal. But when I first started interviewing people, it became very clear to me that this work is crucial to a lot of different communities whose voices have been silenced through years and years and years. This project kind of allows that silenced generation to actually finally have a voice and to have their voices heard and like understood and valued. I just think that's such a huge thing that we have. It's just a gift personally. So then when I started interviewing some people, I first interviewed a couple and we met in this coffee shop, which I don't know if I recommend interviewing people in a coffee shop. It's very loud, but I was so nervous. I had never done an interview like this before. You can hear in the audio I'm just like shaking. I just don't know exactly what to do, what to say. And the more Carrie and Ashley and I talked, the more comfortable we both got with each other and the more comfortable they were with sharing their stories with me, which I found very valuable and something that I should take care of and everybody should take care of. And then after that first interview, I was like, here we go. This is going to be the greatest thing ever. And we started building a more personal connection. Carrie and Ashley both started following each other on Instagram. And like you just start making kind of friends and you've learned more personal aspects of each other's lives. And that's something that's so cool that I wouldn't have ever gotten that gift of. I would have never met Carrie and Ashley or Lorena and Kitty if I wasn't a part of this project, and I'm just very grateful for that. And so we went to Alabama for the Queer History South Conference, which I was really nervous about. I had never been to Alabama, and there's just kind of this stigma that Alabama is very anti-LGBTQ. And I was just kind of nervous about it because I was like, what's this conference going to do? Like, what's going to happen? And when we first got there that first day, and we were meeting all these people, I quickly noticed that there were a lot of people working on their master's degree and their doctoral degrees, and I was just like, I am an undergraduate, a junior who has done 2 interviews, and I feel like I have nothing to say, nothing to contribute, and I was very intimidated. But the more we kind of went in these classroom settings and we all discussed oral history and we all discussed like why this matters, what comes next, what we can all do to improve our individual projects, it just helped me grow not only academically but as a person, I think, because I got to meet all these people and then we got to find connections, and then I kind of figured out that I really would like to do this kind of work in the future. I never really knew what I wanted to do coming to college, and this is something that I've quickly grown to love, and I've really appreciated everything about it. But yeah, that conference was a lot of fun. It was just a great time. We got to meet a lot of people, and we came back and we were all just ready to but continue our project with even more fervor than we had before. So, yeah.
And I'm a new intern. This is my first semester doing it. So what kind of drew me to it was sort of the same reasons Libby was talking about, just being able to give a voice to people that haven't really had a voice in history. As many of you know, history has kind of been dominated by the straight male population, so it's just pretty cool to, try and help with that and give a voice and listen to people's stories that have been erased and ignored. And I feel what we really haven't talked about a lot is just how fun the interview process is. Getting to meet someone and listen to their stories, especially the fact that we do the intergenerational interview process. So I get to go and listen to someone that's been through way more than I've been through and just, really learn and take away a lot from that. So yeah.
Is there anything else you want us to add? Okay, cool. Thanks.
So I will say University of North Carolina, Asheville was the only institution at the Queer History South Conference that traveled with undergraduates. I took all 3 of our undergraduates. We were it. And they hid their nervousness very well because everyone was extremely impressed with them. Everyone assumed that they were master's students. And then when we started being a little more transparent about the fact that they were undergraduates, the conference organizers in particular were just blown away that I was doing this like as an overload, and that we were just kind of really grassroots building this archive together. And the students are just an integral part of that. And without students, I can keep doing interviews, Rachel can keep doing interviews, but without the students, we lose a very crucial part. Here's just 2 quotes about oral history and why we chose this methodology. I think oral history is very grounded in feminist politics and is very grassroots. As someone who's from a rural Appalachian setting, voice has always been the dominant mode for communicating in terms of like educating people about what you should put on that tomato plant to get rid of that bug, or, you know, all of that stuff. And so this is an ancient technology that we're now repurposing in this kind of way. So oral histories, Alessandro Portelli says, oral sources tell us not just what people did, but what they wanted to do, what they believed they were doing, and what they now think they did. This metacognition that happens in an oral history setting is really amazing, because you don't just hear the events, and events are really important, but it's really how you felt about that. How might you change that? What happens next? Paul Thompson is another oral historian and a theorist, and he talks about, you know, the documenting reality and the complexity of reality is rather impossible in a survey or, you know, in all of these other more quantitative measures. But a qualitative methodology like oral history just involves telling stories. And we're doing that coding of data and all those things that you would do in a different type of project. All right, how are we doing with time? Do you want to do the next part? Would be awesome.
So why are we doing oral history? One of them involves activism. So oral history can encourage community involvement. We have a really, really good quote here about some community involvement very local to the area. So if y'all want to read that, should I read that? I can read that. Okay, yeah. We started what was called the Needle Exchange Program of Asheville in 1994. I was doing street outreach on the streets of downtown Asheville in what was called the Grove Arcade. It was a public sex environment, and I was tripping over needles in downtown Asheville at the time. So, like, this is just one example of something that we just wouldn't really know a lot about if it weren't for oral history. Like, I hadn't really heard anything about the Needle Exchange or any of this kind of activism in Asheville until I started working on this project. It also involves identifying needs and assets within LGBTQ communities, which there is another slide on later that I'm going to touch on. It's also a lot about building connections, intergenerational and intersectional. Here's a really good quote from Dr. Russell, who is now a retired professor from UNC Asheville. She says, "I identified as heterosexual. I was born in '55. My mother was a progressive woman in terms of sexuality, but I had internalized enough, I think, this notion that lesbians were bad people and still had a sense of myself as a good person. So I think I was just reconciling. I mean, I was always very butchy, and it was just obvious to anyone but me." I really like that quote. So we definitely want to involve all kinds of people in this project, everyone from elders to middle-aged folks to youth like us in this project. Elders have all kinds of history that they've experienced, things that, like Kaylin was saying, like we've never experienced ourselves, that they can tell us about local activism, local history, things of that sort. Middle-aged folks, also really, really important. Proof that LGBTQ folks exist at all stages of life. And then youth like us. So we really want to make those connections when we're doing these oral histories. So community needs assessment. Go ahead and read the quote first. "We were coming out and going, you know what? I don't care if I have to be passable. I don't care if I have to fit into a norm. I don't have to do this young or old. I can do this at any age, and you should just respect it because I'm a human being and I deserve that." I love that so much. So some of the major goals of this project are to form a needs assessment and some asset mapping for the community. So we want to know what kind of resources currently exist for LGBTQ folks in the Asheville, Western North Carolina area. What kind of resources are lacking? What kind of resources do we need? And what do people want? So for me, for like one example, I'm really interested in healthcare. So I want to know, like, can LGBTQ folks access good doctors here? Do they avoid going? Is there anywhere they can go for treatment? It's just something I'm interested in personally. We want to know what kind of support people are getting here, whether from like religious communities or local organizations, activism organizations, things like that. We want to know also, we ask pretty much everyone, either why did you come to Asheville, and also why are you staying in Asheville rather than being somewhere else? So that we know really like why this region is drawing people in. Cool. Yeah, that's one.
Thanks, Mark. Just a couple more words about the partnership and how these partners came together. A couple years ago, I'm retired. I'm a scientist emeritus with the U.S. Geological Survey. Of course, I'm an aquatic ecologist, actually by training, but I did have a degree in history, and I've been wondering how can I apply that. And when I began my work with Blue Ridge Pride, as essentially an academician, I go, what can I do? So outreach was something that I felt that I might have a role in doing, and we thought about this oral history project, and as Blue Ridge Pride has really grown and changed over the last few years under the leadership of Tina White, it's expanded extraordinarily in the last few years. We came to the idea, we have a festival every year which really raises people's awareness about the LGBTQ community here in Asheville, but we can do more. And part of our idea at Blue Ridge Pride is to be an umbrella organization that doesn't represent the entire community but connects them. And this oral history project just seemed like a wonderful opportunity to do that. I also have to give a big plug to the YMCA, because the YMCA now for about almost 15 years has been among YMCAs in the nation, of which there are 22,000, a leader. About 4 years ago, they chose 20 Ys throughout the nation to take on the task of how to build bridges better with the LGBTQ community. This Y, the Y of Western North Carolina, had already been progressive. That phrase, you all means all, you can find up on virtually every YMCA here in Western North Carolina, of which there are many. This was not done without a struggle, both at the national level with the Y, and also locally. Not all the communities, and particularly some of the outlying Ys that we have in places like Marion or in Hendersonville, just went, well, what's this all about? Why are we celebrating Pride in June at the YMCA? But our director, Paul Vest, essentially said for those individuals who did not consider all to be all, well, this may not be the organization for you, which I thought took real guts to stand up. So sort of a next stage is, and something that you here can help us with, is that we want to identify other organizations that we can partner with. And in some cases, if you have an organization that has a history of working with the community, what has your history been like? So we want the history of individuals, but we want the history of institutions and how they have aided the community and how they could be a mentor to organizations that have made that decisions. They've stepped up and said, we want to be inclusive. So I'm looking to the Y and to their leadership to be one of those mentors or to be a partner, not assuming that the Y knows how to do everything or how to do it well. But through partnership and through communications, both in institutions and individuals, I think we can reach that goal of a wider understanding of Asheville writ large. Asheville, the wonderful thing about living here, I started coming here about 20 years ago in regards to my work, and I moved here about 5 years ago, is that there are so many layers. Asheville is an onion, and as you peel back each layer, you find another community, another way in which there's a sense of place. And that has been a wonderful journey for me, as someone who's been involved in my kind of work for decades. And I think it's been, as you've heard, it's been a real thrill for the students to have a chance to do this kind of work. Are we ready for questions and discussions, Amanda?
I want to say one more thing.
Sure.
Okay, so the next phase for us is to digitize all this stuff that we have. So all of these things, as well as this may not come back. It's okay. Our goal is to try to create an online virtual Pride Center with the help of Blue Ridge Pride, so that, you know, I am a kid in Bakersville, North Carolina, and I want to see who else is queer in my area or has ever had an oral history done. Or is there a lesbian gathering group in Bakersville, for example? And I want to be able to like put in my hometown and see resources related to my hometown that come from the LGBT archive. So that is where we're headed with that. We're seeking grant funds to help with that. And we have a partner here on campus who's helping us write that as well. But we're always seeking more. Yeah, it'll be awesome. So questions. What questions do you have for us?
Questions and discussion.
So what other universities have tackled or focused on this really exciting project, this archive project? It sounds like we're cutting edge. I mean, hopefully we are, but I would like to think that other universities are.
So in 1995, the Journal of Appalachian Studies published an Out in the Mountains article, and this was coming out of the University of Kentucky, and they had the exact same conversation that I had with Jean. A professor went in and said, I want to use an LGBT archive. Where can I access that? And they were like, we don't really have one, right? And so then they started building one there with like 10 interviews. So it is just very piecemeal. Invisible Histories Project is really trying to cover the Southeast region. And so all of the stuff that they have, we will, you know, of course it's online and we can access it. Chapel Hill has the Southern Oral History Project, and they have information, some LGBT dedicated archival material, but nothing compared to what we've already done in this first year, which is hugely impressive and is a total testament to the students and our two partners who financially gave us money, because I've not otherwise received any support from my institution for this work.
One note is that the conference that we attended, that conference was a decade-long effort to get together.
Absolutely.
So that effort throughout the Southeast had been bubbling up much in the same fashion that it has done so here. But it took a full decade in order to get that conference together. So there was a lot of energy and joy in that conference, but it was really a kicking off point, I think, for this effort regionally.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will, when we do the virtual online archive, we will tap into all of their archival material stuff. You know, we have some people who have offered things about drag performances, for example, but they have a whole sect of their archive already that has gowns and crowns and just all of these things that they've taken pictures of and have interviews related to. So we're aspiring to that. They have a really beautiful model for us to follow.
There is one difficult issue that we're facing, and it's somewhat reflected in some experience I've had with an organization based in Phoenix, Arizona, called 1 in 10. When 1 in 10 began their work, it was because there was the concern that about 1 in 10 of the homeless people in the greater Phoenix area were in this community. As they got their work started, they found that that was not true. It was 4 in 10. Other information they found is that many of those people who were homeless were young people, who the local police force didn't refer to as runaways. They refer to them as throwaways, not in a derogatory sense, but literally they had been thrown away from their communities, from their church, from their schools, from their families. Being where we are in Western North Carolina, we have that transient population that comes to Asheville. Meeting their needs and understanding how to contact them and communicate with them and get their stories is a real challenge, because they don't trust authority. They haven't done well by way of authority. but they have extraordinary stories to tell, but they also have extraordinary needs that we need to address. And that's where some of the needs assessment portion of our work comes in as an important element. So if you can share ideas with us how you believe we can reach that community, that would be very helpful. And I'd say it's personally it's on sort of the top of the list for me, because I've met some of these individuals and know how much at risk they are. Another interesting fact that came out of the 1 in 10 effort, which is quite robust, they found out that young people who found themselves on the street in the community, if we did not reach them to try and help them within 4 days, an average in 4 days, they would be approached for sex work. So we had 4 days to reach those people and try to secure their future for them before they got caught up in that system. So your help in that regard, or contacts you can make, or suggestions would be very helpful.
Are there questions?
The great answers are over here with the students. So any questions for the students in particular?
What's the most interesting thing you guys found?
Sounds
If you come up to the mic.
Yeah, come up here and answer it. Yeah, the Altamont is a cool guess.
Okay. So I think it might have gotten passed around, but the Altamont newsletter is this underground Asheville paper that kind of went under the radar. It's just like an amazing collection of, like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just very personal, and the one that I passed around actually mentions UNC Asheville as one of the only universities to spread awareness about the AIDS crisis back in '87. It was just like spread awareness, teach safe sex practices, how to avoid it, what to do if you're in that situation. It's just an
There's
amazing
a list of
thing.
doctors in there, like here are some doctors to go to or not go to. It's
Yeah.
also really interesting because, like, this is a technology, right? Like an underground newspaper that for some students feels like, what is that about, right? Like we could just pass this around, but zines and all of those things are present here. It's very cool to see paper and touch things. And absolutely.
I think we got it here in the collage. It's like I think it's the French Broad in like the 1800s doing it might be fake news, but it's like a pride fest in the 1800s, and I just thought that was great. It's amazing. I'm so excited to put it together.
There was a
Cool thing.
community that I talked to, one of the interviews I did. There was a community called Kindred Spirits, which was both sort of a spiritual community, and they were investigating spiritual issues, but they were also doing that in the context of sort of the Native American idea of Two-Spirit. And they had retreats here for many years, and they had little newsletters as well, and that's made its way into the archives. And that's valuable because that is something that may have had its origin here, but is sort of national or international in character now.
And Phoenix was a support group for
Yeah.
a trans support group, and it was like it's one of the longest running trans support groups. The other one's in San Francisco, right? And it's here in Asheville,
Yeah.
which is amazing. And we've interviewed around Phoenix already, right?
Yeah.
That was Kaylin's interview last week.
I interviewed one of the people that actually started Asheville Phoenix with Holly Boswell,
Yeah.
and tons of trans movements have actually started out because of Asheville Phoenix.
We're trying to interview people around Holly Boswell. She was a very integral part of the LGBT community here, and she has passed. And so we're interviewing people that knew her work, so we can try to historicize her activism and really make it as public so that she gets the honor she deserves, for sure. Any other questions? Tina?
Less a question, I just wanted to say I consider this the most important thing that Blue Ridge Pride is doing, bar none. And I don't think oral history is someone said that some people question the validity or the rigor of oral history. I think it is the most rigorous and most important form of research. First, as an activist, you know, I used to listen to the speeches of Malcolm X. It wasn't until I learned his personal story that I went, holy shit, no wonder he's mad. Patrisse Khan-Cullors, who's an incredible activist, I saw her on TV. It wasn't until I read her story, When They Call You a Terrorist, that I went, holy shit, who would want to grow up in that? Forgive me. You know, when you personalize it, it's when people, that's when they're moved to action. I'm an academic at heart, so I read all these books and statistics for jails and poverty. It isn't until I connect to a personal story that people are moved to act, where they get angry. It's also how we keep people honest. I'll give everyone homework. 27 Views of Asheville is a book that I just picked up recently, and in fact, Daniel Pierce, he's not in the room, is he? He's a professor here, and he's featured in it. And right together, there are 3 stories that everyone should read. Daniel's, or should I say Professor Pierce here? Anyway, his story is about the closing of the Asheville Motor Speedway in 1999, and it's told with enough empathy where, just as we talk about keeping Asheville queer, you realize what it felt like to that community who was having erasure of their own. And we often don't think about other people's stories empathetically enough. Right after that was Johnny Grant, the owner of Urban News, tells his story about wetting his pants in public as a child underneath the Vance Monument when he ventured down there, not realizing it was whites only bathroom, and he was terrorized and terrified by the people there, and it's a horrible story. And then right after that, you read a story by another local, and I don't want to denigrate her because it's a beautiful story, but when you read it right after these other two, and it's a woman who's talking about adjusting to having a dog and becoming a member of a dog park community. And you can just feel the white privilege in that story. You shouldn't criticize it, but when you read those 3 stories side by side, it awakens in you a deeper understanding of a community in flux. And I think we all should read other groups' stories, but we need to bring ours out and give it that humanity, because and that to me is so important. I'm so glad you all are doing this important work. Thank you.
A brief story from a couple years ago at Pride that sort of illustrates how history can be erased and people can misunderstand what they see. I was working at the YMCA booth at Pride 2 years ago, and our soon-to-be sheriff wanted to come over and visit the Y. So I went and got him and brought him back. And as we were crossing one of the roads, I saw a couple, man and wife, who were looking there. And the man was looking around him going, this is really something. I go, and I just had to stop and say, yeah, it really is. He goes, no, you don't understand. This is not Asheville. This has nothing to do with the Asheville, as it really is. He said, this is our town. It's not your town. And my response to him was, there are 10,000 people here. This is, at this moment, this is our town. But the truth is, we share this town. And I later had a conversation with Tina, and I realized something else when he was down there on Vance Memorial, and we have a mutual friend and a neighbor of hers who's an African-American who's lived here for many decades. And she said, not only is his vision wrong in the sense that it didn't, he was excluding the LGBT community in his vision of what Asheville was, that entire area historically had been a black neighborhood. So he was wrong on so many levels on the way he understood what our community is. And we're going about the job of trying to portray that with greater accuracy, and those communities which are most likely to be erased will be raised up.
Any other questions? We're like kind of out of time. Please look at all of these archival things if you want, touch things and ask questions.
Come and go.
Thank you so much for coming to support us today.
Thank you. Thank you.